Let me allow you to as well, Elisa, comment on that. We're talking about the future of finance in Africa, and Dr. Iwa has just made an amazing keynote address here. What's your quick reactions on this subject as a start?
I'm really passionate about financial inclusion. It's really a topic that is extremely close to my heart. And I know because I'm helping a lot of startups that the infrastructure really needs a lot of improvement. One of my mentee was building an e-commerce, is building an e-commerce, and I was helping her to, in Mozambique, and I was helping her to understand how to build it, how to grow, how to do the right strategy, the business model. And then she told me, okay, well, one of my main huge problem is about the logistic part for me. So it's not just about the infrastructure in terms of finance, in terms of 5G, which is a huge problem, but also the logistic problem. It adds up to all the problems that all these amazing entrepreneurs are having right now. So she could ship away out from Mozambique in a reliable way her products, and she had to basically drive hours every day to South Africa to ship their product and build her business, which I mean for me was like okay, this is a real problem. There are finance problems, there are logistics problems. We really need to address all together all these things. And on the other side, I was really amazed by her. I mean, I know there are all these things that need to be addressed and need to grow, but the willing that she has to drive hours to ship their products to grow their business, I think that's amazing. And that's something that the governments need to recognize to the entrepreneurs in Africa, because despite all the situation that they can encounter, they are really doing amazing things. They are really building the change, and they need the support to the government to go through this change. So the communication between government and entrepreneurs, I think it will be one of the key points to push the future of finance in Africa. Again, it's not just about money, it's all the infrastructure that need to grow together in order to allow these amazing entrepreneurs to show the world their amazing products and what they're doing. So I really believe that African entrepreneurs has all the cards to be the best in the world. They just need the support of the infrastructure. And I know that it's not just, it's not easy, it's not a small things. But again, we can do a lot by helping the government to build this infrastructure, because everything else is already there.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Iwa. I think I already introduced Chris, who is here with us, so I want to request you, Chris, to kindly take a seat right here. Of course, we're talking about the future of finance in Africa, and I don't know what hits you, and I like what Dr. Iwa has said, that we have to grow hand in hand. Infrastructure, yes, as we also look at growing the finance sector in itself, because they go hand in hand. I can assume definitely when you're crossing borders and the likes, you don't want to have a lot of issues like someone described here, I think on day one, that wow, by the time you're crossing over the continent, the value of your cash has diminished in a way because of the changes you have to go through. And so looking at finance being decentralized in a way, and in a way that can really go across board and you can transact wherever you are, then that would really save a lot of things that we're seeing. And that's the future that we're really hoping that we can have. But let's just go to the meat of the matter, because once what would these financial advancements do to us? A lot of it is about trade. We're talking about and looking through some of the advancements that we're seeing. I think I have seen the Africa Continental Trade Agreement, some of these sign-ups that are coming up. And definitely if the financial sector is left behind, business people will not feel encouraged to dive into the opportunities. Why? Because they'll still end up losing maybe more across because of our barriers and the tariffs we put across ourselves, the monies that will go anywhere. But I would want to hear from our panelists, especially, what you see as the future of trade with this kind of disruption happening in the finance. How will it change the way Africans trade? In your opinion, how would this really come across? And allow me to start with you, sir. Samuel, yes.
Well, I would just want to point out that financial services is actually a big enabler of trade, for instance. So I think in my earlier remarks, I made a mention of the East African community and maybe the East and Central African community. So I think what we are seeing, even what the Central Bank of Kenya, for instance, put forward a discussion paper. So this is actually just trying to have a conversation or a discussion on how we are going to carry this out. So one, we look at the local payment networks. So just to look at the mobile money, for instance, I'm sure for the Kenyans in the room, for the largest network operator, there are those who claim that the transaction fees are quite high. So one, we need to lower the cost of the transaction fees. So that we can have more people sort of have frictionless payments. Secondly, I look at the regional and the global payment systems. So we are talking about different countries here, trade across borders or cross-border trade. So, and we are seeing an integration of the regional economies as well. So then moving over to the continental stage, where, as you've rightly mentioned, with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which is actually the largest in terms of number of countries that have actually signed up on it. So I think that's what makes us different. And as Dr. Iwa spoke about DeFi, about the different forms of either assets or forms of earning a living, for instance. So people are able to either tokenize their land or on their digital assets, they're able to have an income on that. So essentially, it's just allowing frictionless payments globally. So maybe at some point we'll have either an African or we'll all be on the global payment network.
Awesome. Andreas, what will be your reaction on this subject?
Well, I do see a lot of opportunities to move to not only digital currency, but also blockchains and NFTs. The point here is I just got some fish. Now I NFT this fish, and it becomes almost bankable immediately. So that means I can get a credit on this fish because I can already put it somewhere else. So I can already make money out of that. And now, or something is in a warehouse, so I can kind of cross-finance this. So I think there's a lot of opportunity when moving into this digital financial world. Nevertheless, I just want to bring another anecdote. I not only went to Juba, not by air, I was also driving there. And now if you cross borders in Africa, the amount of time that it takes to clear your goods, to transact. So I think that is another aspect when we talk about trade, and not only on the financial world, but on the trading world. That is another thing where blockchain and the processes could actually potentially help a lot to make trade much easier cross-border.
Well, thanks for that. Let me now bring in Chris. I would like to hear your perspective so far on this particular subject. We're talking about, the future of finance in Africa and, how we can really advance in matters trade. And you coming from a place where you guys have brought in some serious disruption in Nigeria and even across the borders. What do you see in the offing from your perspective?
First of all, apologies on coming late. It's my first time in Kenya, so I'm still finding my way.
They took you to the market, but don't worry.
No, they blocked the road, so we had to take another turn.
It's okay.
All right. So, what we do, at Patricia. First of all, I don't know why I work at Patricia, and we do cryptocurrency. What it has done in terms of trade is done a couple of things. First of all, Africa, we're not really boisterous in terms of infrastructure. Financial infrastructure has been one of the, because a lot of times people talk about unbanked, right? They will have a lot of unbanked population, but the critical issue is what is the financial infrastructure that can take these people from unbanked to banked. And what our disruption tends to do, using cryptocurrency, is that it brings it closer to the people. It brings financial infrastructure in a way that it is so accessible that you don't even have to have so much to actually get into it. For what this has done for trade is that it has made it very, very easy to have these cross-border transactions, have these remittances in areas where you would not even imagine that government can have some impact. So we have been able to take further steps. We're going to take it some steps further in terms of getting a lot of the work off the financial infrastructure or the typical traditional financial institutions, right? We're able to take it across to say, okay, you don't have to, and the work in Kenya that M-Pesa has done is, it's a testament to that fact. A lot of people may not even have bank accounts, but they are able to transact, and that is a lot. So most times people talk about moving people from banks to unbanked, moving people from unbanked to banks, but the future is not that, right? The future is a lot of disruption, which is going to take the banks to the people. And that's one of the things that cryptocurrency or blockchain has done. And it's really important that we try to understand that we need to support, a lot of these disruptions. Although, there are lots of questions around, what's the effect of this, what's the long-term, what is security for the people. But these are conversations and things that can be hashed out, over time. And it's been done consistently. It has worked greatly in Kenya, and I'm a very big fan of what and the guys at M-Pesa, I've used it. So we're trying to, make that model scale throughout Africa, where we can use, these currencies to be able to transact digitally from, one part of your country to the other parts of Africa. I think it's really fantastic, and it's what we need to double down on to make sure that everyone, has access to, important financial services through digitalization.
You're right, and I like the fact that there's a lot of hope from what you're doing, and I think there's an opportunity, as you're saying, in Africa, because looking at it, even with the technologies that we have, I like the examples you've given, the M-Pesa and all that. Some of these barriers that we have still on borders in terms of tariffs whenever you cross over are still in effect in a way, because this is still fiat in a way that is just converted. Yeah. But now with crypto, the value will still be intact wherever you are, and we can't wait for this to boom out. And so what you're doing is great, and I can't wait to have my Patricia card. I know you're already here, so I think we're going to have a conversation on that. Let me get back to Elisa. I don't know, what's your reaction towards matters to do with trade and how this can be enhanced with the disruption in finance? Would you have an extra comment on this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, disruption in finance is already happening in Africa, and Africa is leading the way. I think Africa doesn't take enough credit for that because Africa has all these infrastructure problems, and African entrepreneurs need to deal with these every day. It also means that they are more swift to find amazing solution. I know that maybe not many Europeans or Americans know this, but many of the great invention and great startups are born here in Africa. For example, M-Pesa, it's an historical company, but there are more new and young entrepreneurs that are building amazing things. And also, if you think about the prepaid system in UK for the utility bills, it was copied by the system that it's in Africa. So we have major company like British Gas showing this innovation in technology in a way, but they actually copied to Africa. Of course, this is a huge country. There is a lot of people, young people with a lot of potential, and payments and fintech technology was really interesting in Africa before. Crypto will be more interesting, even more disruption. But and that will affect the trade as well, absolutely. But not just in Africa, it will affect the finance and the trade in the world as well. My hope is really that these African startups that are doing amazing projects will not be the finance disruption in Africa, but it will be the Africa disruption of the world in finance. So they can really be the movement in the world, not just in Africa. And I really think, I know that we most of the time focus on the problems, but it must be give the credit where there is credit. And that I think it's important. Also celebrate what it has been done and what African entrepreneurs, together with the government, of course, can do to change the world and brings money from all the world to Africa as well in this way.
All right.
That will be the huge disruption for the finance and trade here.
Absolutely, and I know there's a lot of reactions to this from our panelists here. But Dr. Aiwa, I know I've kept you pending for some time, but it's I was allowing our panelists to really discuss from your presentation, to have their reactions on that. You know, interesting enough, in one of the sessions today, we were talking about bridging the gap between the rich and the poor, and how digital currencies and the blockchain technology can help out in this. And one of the panelists, actually two of them, give amazing examples, how they have gone down to the local farmers down there and have enabled them to trade without necessarily going through the fiat systems that we have already. And of course, the challenges that come along with it and all that. But the bottom line is that they are trading, sort of like bringing back barter trade in a different way. And, you know, it was quite eye-opening to see the opportunities that we have. However, you know, I don't know whether this can be replicated across Africa. And in fact, one of my questions then will be, should it then Africa just create its own cryptocurrency? I'm just thinking that way, you know. That's a question I want to ask here. And, you know, because Patricia is in the house, you know, we had one deep conversation, I think, on day one, I think day two. And I remember Hannah saying that why buy while you can create? So I think I want to throw that question to you. What are you seeing? Should we do this so that at least we can harmonize Africans and flow along? But post that question because I had already put Dr. Ayo on notice. So Dr. Ayo, what's your reaction to that?
Okay, and thank you for the opportunity, actually, because I'm quite passionate about that question that you've asked. So I listened to the last panel, and to a large extent, I agreed with everything that was said. One of my points of maybe slight disagreement was where somebody was maybe mentioning that this idea of central bank digital currencies is really prone to risks. And yes, I get the fact that the minute you begin to centralize blockchains or the technology around blockchains, then you're pretty much opening it for much more security breaches. So I'm quite cognizant of that. So basically, the more decentralized the network is, the more secure it is. But then, you know, I believe that the developments in the blockchain space, particularly as it relates to facilitating central bank digital currencies, has a huge role to play, not just only for countries, but even also for regions. And I'm a huge advocate of the role that a regional central bank digital currency can play in facilitating intra-African trade. And I've done a paper that I would like to share with you on that, maybe at the end. But the summary of that paper really was that we know that the African continent has been plagued with currency inconvertibility that has resulted in the poor records of intra-regional trade that we had. And we're quite glad that we have new technologies in place that have facilitated payments and settlements of transactions, such as through the Pan-African payments and settlement system that we're still sort of working through, which would be great in facilitating intra-African trade. But I also believe that there's a need for us, not just only as the African continent, to just really focus on Africa. I know there's huge progress that needs to be placed on us as the continent facilitating inter-African trade. But I also think there's a role that we need to play globally, and I believe that we have what it takes. And this is where I feel that the DLT and blockchains can help us have a representation in engaging in cross-border trade that can easily be settled. So if we have a wholesale central bank digital currency, and I'd explain what that is. So a wholesale central bank digital currency would be used obviously only by permitted institutions to be able to settle interbank transactions on the interbank global market, if you like. And one of the things that will do would be to help us engage in global trade that can easily be settled. And one of the ways that can be achieved is if we have obviously experiments, as a lot of countries are exploring with the central bank digital currencies, but for us to explore a regional version of a wholesale central bank digital currency that can then make us able to participate in that space. But if we're constantly sort of pushing back against, the idea about a state participating in having its own currency or its own central bank digital currency, or indeed a regional central bank digital currency, that kind of sets us back again globally. And I'm a huge advocate of the financial inclusion that is facilitated by crypto assets and cryptocurrencies. But I also believe that there's a role and there's a need that central bank digital currencies, whether retail and wholesale, can play in advancing economies and even us as a region.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, that's fair enough. I must say that if you participated yesterday on the CDBCs, we were talking about it, and there was a lot of a debate on whether they're really working or not. But I love the fact that you have a positive element towards it. But I want to give a chance to Chris to react to that particular subject we're trying to discuss here. Are you about to create one, or what are you seeing?
All right, thank you. So before I get into creation or non-creation, I would like to just touch a bit on what Dr. Omar said. Now, I think I hold a slightly different view on CBDC from my side of the table on cryptocurrency. I think it's a welcome idea. So growth is exponential, and also you don't reject growth, right? 10 years ago, 5 years ago, most governments were not talking about even the idea of the digital currency, but with a lot of disruption going on the continent, and they have to sit down and say, how can we be close? How can we get a bit closer to those things? And this is what the CBDCs has come to represent. And what it does is that it drives education for people to understand that digital currencies are here, right? They might not be the cryptocurrencies that you understand, but the government is already saying, what, we are playing in a digital, it's a currency, it's digital, but it's just centralized. No, it's different from cryptocurrency. Now, what this does is that, for instance, at Patricia, there's what we do to drive education or drive crypto adoption is actually trying to inculcate crypto transactions in the daily life of an individual. So, for instance, with the Patricia crypto app, you can use it to buy airtime. So after you make your returns, you don't need to convert to fiat. You buy airtime, you pay for some educational services, and this is a strategy in order to ensure that people understand that digital currencies are actually currencies. Because most times there's this concept of cryptocurrencies are probably just maybe an asset, maybe there's a lot of debates around it. But the more we can drive people to understand that they can actually much more than speculate about this. They can actually use this for their daily transactions. It goes a long way in driving that education. And what the CBDCs have done is that there's a lot more awareness, right, in the populace that this is actually possible. And whether or not a central an African cryptocurrency can be created, it starts with things like this. The fact that the government has already said, we are already a bit involved in this, right? Now it gives more room for disruptors to say, okay, how can we take these 5, 6, 7 steps above, and how can we give you like a better solution or a better cryptocurrencies that has more advantages, lower fees, lower transaction, more inclusion. Like you mentioned, the guys who are using blockchain to do P2P at the granular level, that's, it's fantastic work. So the more any type of growth is allowed in this space, right? It's always going to help. Whether it's the government coming in through CBDCs, whether it's more tokens created, whether it's IPOs that are run through cryptocurrencies, the DAOs. Let everyone come in. Let the space. The more evolved the space gets, the more deeper we can go into this conversation and now start thinking about how we can harmonize as a continent to actually create a currency that can do a lot of good for trade and commerce around Africa.
I'm loving this debate and the direction it's taking. My goodness. I want your reaction as well, Lemuel. And one of the things that I wanted to word on, that's what at least you can now react to this, is that CBDCs sort of beginning to be welcomed in a way, but in a cautious way. People are wondering, what are these governments doing? And I like what Chris has just brought in. It's something, I think you have the e-Naira now. I think you are our case example. We're trying to see what is happening. Here in Nairobi, in Kenya, we are yet to give our opinions by May. So my question is this. Is this a nice way of governments trying to come into the DeFi? So that at least they can try and, have some control. I'm just wondering, because why stay that long? And then when people are already having these conversations, when you're thinking, okay, let's move this. So I'm still trying to marry that together, but help me out as you react to that.
Sure. So I think for governments, they are more cautious because they're more concerned with the stability of the economy. So they would want to first have learn from the markets, learn from the different networks, what they're doing. For instance, I know the number of blockchains that have actually partnered with governments. So, for instance, when you look at Cardano and you look at Luna with UST, where they have an algorithmic stablecoin. So, for me, I see the CBDC as a stablecoin by the government, or actually e-cash. We've had M-Pesa for a while, which is e-money. So the only difference would be that this would be either somewhat decentralized and maybe there would be a little bit of participation. But in essence, I think this also gives the government an opportunity to know how well, for instance, the economy is doing. So they can have, for instance, real-time data on what's happening in the market. So be it inflation, if they would want to check on those metrics, whether it comes to remittances, whether accepting or also for issuing out these transfers to the elderly. So it will give them a little bit more of control, and that's where I think there's a little bit of concern in terms of privacy, what happens to that. But I think it's a welcome move, and as Dr. Iwa had actually noted in her presentation, I like the fact that these currencies are coming at a point where they will now start educating the masses or the citizens. So with time, people will now get to understand why maybe use an algorithmic stablecoin instead of a CBDC. But it will also encourage the evolution of open banking, as she was saying. So like for instance, globally, the cost of starting up a bank has fallen by 98%. So when you look at that and the possibilities that a CBDC, for instance, will bring on board in terms of open banking, it's huge. Look at the UK, for instance, with the Payment Service Directive 2. There's a lot that has happened. And actually, the fintechs now have a level playing field. And I'm sure the banks there would actually see that they now have a little bit of an advantage over them. So it brings in some very interesting dynamics. And at the end of the day, when we look at the Agenda 2063 or Vision 2030, it's all about the standard of living and the quality of life. So I think this is actually going to be enabled by DLT.